Hi, and welcome back to Perspectives. I'm Ellie Ballard, and today we're going to tackle some of the most pressing issues and challenges faced by police officers and police organizations. Now, keep in mind that we're really only going to scratch the surface in this lecture, and that the challenges facing policing are far more complex and nuanced than really the nature and scope of this class allows.
New officers learn what is considered appropriate behavior in policing through socialization with seasoned veterans and through their participation with the police subculture. The police subculture is a set of shared values, attitudes, and behaviors that characterize law enforcement. While this subculture promotes a sense of solidarity among officers, there are pros and cons. Police officers share values that can help them cope with the difficult and emotionally taxing job, such as supportiveness, teamwork, empathy for each other, and camaraderie. Officers can rely on their counterparts in dangerous situations because of the values such as bravery and sacrifice. Police subculture can also have negative aspects, including masculinity and invincibility. The police world is often described as extremely masculine. Police officers may feel that they need to act as though they can handle anything, which can lead to a struggle to show weakness. Police may also see themselves as distinct from the general population, which leads to mistrust and suspicion on all sides of the equation. In law enforcement profession, certain traits are assumed to coalesce in individuals forming a distinct police personality. This personality has been defined as a value orientation specific to law enforcement officers. It consists of interrelated personality characteristics, including bravery, loyalty, authoritarianism, cynicism, suspiciousness, courage, self-assertiveness, aggression, distrustfulness, secretiveness, conservatism, dogmatism, and alienation. Research suggests that there are two sources of the police working personality: personality traits that already existed in the officer, and characteristics formed by the officer's role as an authority figure, emerging partly from the pressures associated with being in law enforcement, and consisting of cynicism, suspiciousness, and an external isolation, maybe internal solidarity and conservatism. The common theme describing the police personality is the idea that law enforcement officers are a distinct group that can be identified based on a certain set of personality characteristics. While we can certainly see the downside of these characteristics, if you look at this list, are there any characteristics that you might see as helpful to police officers or having a function in their police role? Police work is dangerous. According to the FBI, more officers were feloniously killed between 2021 and 2023 than any other consecutive 3-year period in the past 20 years, 194 in total. Information about the offenders of these killings in 2023 show there were 57 offenders in total, 54 were male, 28 were white, 8 were reported as having a mental illness, and 32 had prior arrests for violence. The southern region had the most line of duty deaths yearly compared to other regions. While there's been a slow decline of officers feloniously killed in the line of duty over the past 3 years, the data shows the rate of officers assaulted has increased each of the past 3 years. Agencies reported a little over 79,000 officers were assaulted in 2023, marking the highest officer assault rate in the past 10 years. Most officer assaults occurred when responding to simple assaults against a non-officer, followed by drug and narcotic violations. The number of officers assaulted and injured by firearms has also climbed over the years, reaching a 10-year high in 2023 with approximately 466 officers assaulted and injured by firearms. Out of all public safety workers, police officers suffered the most fatalities due to traffic-related injuries as well. According to the latest data from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, 311 law enforcement officers were killed between 2011 and 2020 due to motor vehicle crashes. Approximately a quarter of crashes involved an officer being struck by a vehicle. For example, 2 troopers were struck and killed when trying to help an individual walking along the interstate. Others were involved in fatal accidents when removing debris and during suspect detainment. Officers may work in environments involving hazardous materials, drugs, or extreme weather conditions. Encounters with methamphetamine labs, for example, can lead to toxic chemical exposures. Likewise, officers may come into contact with bloodborne pathogens or infectious diseases. For example, the DOJ estimates that 346 officers died in 2020 as a result of a confirmed or presumed exposure to COVID-19 while on duty. Many officers work long shifts, sometimes in excess of 12 hours, or work overnight. Fatigue is a common issue among law enforcement officers and can have serious consequences for both officers and the public. Fatigue can lead to impaired judgment, slower reaction times, and decreased situational awareness. This can increase the risk of officer-involved shootings, accidents, and other serious incidents. Fatigue can harm an officer's mental health by increasing mood swings, anxiety, depression, and the chances of developing mental illness. Fatigue can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome, stress-related illnesses like obesity or hypertension, and other adverse physical effects. The stress of constantly being on alert and managing the unpredictability of situations can lead to physical exhaustion and mental burnout. The emotional toll of the job can affect relationships and overall well-being. Police officers may use negative coping mechanisms such as substance misuse, isolation, or even humor to deal with stress. Recent research has suggested that chronic stress over long periods of time can contribute to the development of post-traumatic stress disorder. Repeated exposure to traumatic events such as witnessing violent crimes, accidents, or abuse can lead to long-term psychological effects. Some police officers may experience what we call cumulative post-traumatic stress disorder, which builds up over time from witnessing multiple traumatic events. Symptoms of PTSD include distressing memories, avoidance, irritability, hypervigilance, impaired concentration, sleep disturbance, anxiety, depression, and phobic avoidance. PTSD can impair an officer's ability to make good decisions, which can impact public safety. Researchers have also linked PTSD with police working personality, suggesting that the personality characteristics of police officers are behavioral manifestations of PTSD. It's estimated about 15% of police officers in the United States experience symptoms of PTSD. However, the true scope of the problem is not fully known. Police officers often face high levels of depression and anxiety due to chronic stress, trauma, and the dangers inherent to their work. Depression can result from repeated exposure to traumatic events, emotional numbness, and the stigma around seeking help, leading to symptoms like irritability once again, sadness, and even suicidal thoughts. Anxiety frequently stems from the need to remain constantly vigilant and the pressure to make split-second life or death decisions, which can result in hypervigilance and generalized anxiety. These mental health challenges can impair job performance, affect physical health, and strain personal relationships. Research has found that 40 to 50% of officers experience psychological distress, such as depression and anxiety, within the previous 4 weeks, and nearly a quarter of them experienced moderate to severe distress. Public scrutiny and criticism can lead to several negative effects on police officers, including increased stress and withdrawal, which can lead to physical health problems like headaches, sleep disturbances. Some officers may engage in depolicing, reducing their activity in response to public scrutiny known as the Ferguson effect, resulting in fewer arrests for minor offenses, Additionally, officers may alter their tactics to limit public interaction due to demoralization or burnout, leading to decreased morale, especially in urban areas. This heightened stress also raises the risk of PTSD and depression among officers. Although a distinct syndrome, moral injury is closely associated with PTSD. Moral injury is a psychological response that can occur in officers when they experience and participate in events that violate their ethical or moral code. This can happen when officers are forced to act in a way that goes against their personal ethics, even when they are doing the right thing for their job. An example might be a domestic violence call where the evidence requires the arrest of one party when the officer knows that the other party is probably historically at fault. Or taking a child out of an abusive home when the child is crying to return. Ticketing someone who's already suffering from the consequences of their actions. Or even a general sense that the way the real world works, as seen by a police officer, is so far from the ideal that it seems hopeless. Moral injury can lead to a range of emotions including shame, sadness, anger, and betrayal. It can also manifest in other ways such as feelings of guilt, social withdrawal, self-destructive behaviors, loss of spirituality, intrusive thoughts, and sleep disturbances. In 2022, 150 police officers died by suicide, highlighting a serious issue within law enforcement. Officers face a 54% greater risk of suicide compared to the general public, with white males in their 40s being the most affected demographic. The majority of these suicides involved their service firearm. Additionally, smaller police departments see higher suicide rates, suggesting that limited resources and support systems may play a significant role in this increased risk. Studies have suggested associations among traumatic work exposures, PTSD symptomatology, and alcohol use may increase the risk of suicide ideation among police officers, which may in turn increase the risk of attempted or completed suicide. Imagine you see the following help wanted advertisement. Job opening, glutton for punishment wanted. Are you tired of cushy jobs with predictable hours, a comfy desk, and the respect of your peers? Well, we have got the gig for you. We're looking for a fearless night owl who's ready to give up their weekends, holidays, and any hope of work-life balance to join our team. As a part of this elite group, you'll brave all the elements, rain, snow, blistering heat, and freezing cold. Because who needs the comfort of indoor heating, right? You'll always get to dive headfirst into hazardous situations involving violence, toxic environments, and, for a fun twist, the occasional communicable disease. Sound good? We thought so. But wait, there's more. As an added bonus, you'll be mistrusted, second-guessed, and possibly despised by the very people you're trying to help. And if you make a mistake, don't worry, you can be sued, fired, and even jailed. Exciting, right? Starting pay is a whopping $35,000. Yeah, we can't believe it either. With benefits that might make it slightly worth it? Apply today if you dare. Well, are you ready to sign up? I'm guessing that the words hell and no are presently coming out of your mouth. I can't imagine there would be many takers. Our job ad, although funny, is instructive and points to one of the primary challenges in recruiting new police officers: generational differences. Millennials and Generation Z, loosely defined as individuals who range from high school age to their late 30s, are more apt to value work-life balance than their baby boomer counterparts. This translates into young people hoping for more flexible hours and guaranteed time off. Mandated overtime and missing holidays with the family are less appealing to millennials and membrations of Gen Z. Other shifts in U.S. culture, such as student loan debt, child care challenges for complex schedules, and the need for double incomes makes police work a stressful occupation for families today. In addition, agencies strongly believe that public perception of law enforcement limits interest in the profession and is a sizable barrier to effective recruitment. Scrutiny of the police, cell phone recordings of interactions between the police and the public, media coverage, and pop cultural portrayals of police have led many young people to view police differently than their parents may have. Overall, a majority of police officers feel their jobs have gotten more difficult. Line of duty deaths have also become more highly publicized, including the killings of police due to community tensions, such as the mass shooting of Dallas police officers in 2016. Each of these factors contribute to the negative perception of policing as a career opportunity. The hiring process itself presents its own challenges. Agencies report there's a low number of individuals applying to agency vacancies, and that among those who do apply, the quality of the applicants is often poor. It's not uncommon for applicants who appear to be strong candidates to fail a background check or divulge disqualifying information later in the hiring process. When agencies do have qualified applicants, the multi-stage hiring process can be long and arduous. It's a process that lasts anywhere from 4 months to over a year. Now, depending on the applicant, qualified individuals may be unable or unwilling to wait that long. There's also been a shift away from people being hired, staying, and retiring from a single agency, or even in the same profession. With the rise of portable retirement plans like 401ks, police officers have more flexibility to move between jobs and even careers without sacrificing their retirement benefits. In the past, officers were incentivized to stay within a department for 20 to 30 years to secure pensions. Now, officers can move to the private sector and other fields, leading to higher turnover rates. Policing is a demanding job with long hours, irregular shifts, high-stress situations, which can make it difficult for officers to maintain healthy work-life balance. Younger generations are placing a higher value on personal time and flexibility. And these needs are, when these needs are not met, officers may leave for careers that offer better balance. Declining morale in many police departments, especially in urban areas, also contributes to these retention issues. Officers may feel demoralized due to negative public perception. They may have limited career advancement opportunities, or just a lack of resources and support from their departments. As a result, many leave law enforcement early in their careers. And of course, this further compounds the issue of retention. If police agencies continue to lose officers without bringing in a number of qualified recruits to replace them, communities will soon begin to feel the effects. Longer wait times for calls for service, fewer crimes solved and cleared, and on-duty officers who are burned out and overworked threaten the quality of life in our communities. If the loss of police officers and employees continues along with a lack of hiring, agencies will continue to take on more strain at both the organizational and individual levels. As vacancy numbers increase, officers become overworked and burned out. And an era of when the epidemic of police suicide and the importance of officer mental wellness are starting to be recognized, thoughtful hiring and workforce retention become more and more important. Now, recruiting, hiring, and retaining a diverse workforce is a challenge across all sectors, but it is especially urgent in law enforcement, which must reflect the diversity of the communities it serves. Increased diversity within law enforcement, including race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, and other characteristics, is key to building trust between police and the communities that they serve. A diverse law enforcement workforce is more open to reform and willing to implement cultural and systemic changes, which can lead to improvement in areas such as community policing and addressing racial bias. Despite efforts, many enforcement agencies struggle to recruit individuals who represent communities due to various barriers in the recruiting, hiring, and retention processes. Take a look at the demographic characteristics of police officers on the right of this slide. Interestingly, the characteristics are a close approximation to what we find in the general public. While overall officer characteristics closely match diversity found in the general population, it's important to keep in mind that these numbers represent the average of all police agencies and doesn't necessarily reflect individual departments at the local level, which can be more or less balanced with the specific populations that they serve. Police corruption refers to unethical or illegal actions taken by law enforcement officers for personal gain or to achieve objectives outside of the law. This can include accepting bribes, engaging in extortion, participating in organized crime, tampering with evidence, or protecting individuals involved in criminal activities. Corruption undermines public trust in the police. It weakens the integrity of the criminal justice system as a whole, and it can lead to further criminal behavior within communities. Addressing police corruption often involves internal oversight, external review boards, stricter policies, and transparent accountability measures to restore public confidence. Power, authority, and discretion produce great potential for abuse. A survey of 7,000 New York City police officers found that 65% of the responding officers don't classify excessive force as corruption. 71% felt accepting a free meal was not a corrupt practice. And 15% responded that personal use of illegal drugs is not corruption. In 1970, Frank Serpico, a New York City police officer, and another officer, in fact a sergeant, David Dirk, reported the widespread corruption within the department. Despite their efforts and their internal attempts to address the issue were largely ignored. So Serpico bravely and publicly exposed the corruption to the New York Times in 1970. Along with the newspaper's expose, it brought intense public scrutiny to the city's police force, and it forced Mayor Lindsay to form the Knapp Commission to investigate these allegations. The Knapp Commission was charged with investigating corruption within the department, and its findings exposed systemic corruption involving police officers accepting bribes from organized crimes, drug dealers, and businesses in exchange for protecting or turning a blind eye to illegal activity. The Commission's investigation classified corrupt officers into two categories: grass eaters, who represent the most common form of corruption, illegitimate activity occurring from time to time during the normal course of police work. It includes things like accepting gratuities or minor bribes, playing favorites, fixing speeding tickets for family and friends, etc. Meat eaters, on the other hand, were officers who actively solicited illicit money-making opportunities, including major bribes, role malfeasance, committing crimes, protecting other corrupt officers, denying civil rights, and committing physical abuse. The Knapp Commission's work led to significant reforms aimed at reducing corruption and the creation of police oversight within the NYPD. The militarization of police refers to the increasing use of military-style tactics, equipment, and mentality in civilian law enforcement. This trend has sparked debate about its impact on policing and community relations. The militarization of police is a complex issue, both with supporters and critics offering valid arguments. Some of the pros: Military-grade equipment such as body armor and armored vehicles provides better protection for officers during dangerous situations like active shooter incidents, terrorism, or riots. Militarization also allows officers or law enforcement to be better prepared for and respond to events such as terrorist attacks, hostage situations, or large-scale violent incidents where standard police tools may be insufficient. The presence of military-style equipment can also act as a deterrent to potential threats or criminals, signaling a strong capability to maintain control in volatile situations. Militarized units such as SWAT teams are also equipped to handle complex operations requiring precision and force, like drug raids or rescuing hostages, which standard police officers might not be able to execute safely. Now, some of the cons include really an erosion of public trust. Militarization can create an us versus them dynamic, distancing police from the communities that they serve. The presence of military gear at peaceful protests or in minority communities can lead to a perception of police as an occupying force rather than protectors. The adoption of military tactics and equipment can lead to more aggressive approach to policing, potentially escalating situations that could be resolved through de-escalation or community engagement. It also can do damage to police-community relations. This frequent use of militarized equipment, especially during protests or in heavily policed communities, can undermine efforts to build trust through community policing. And it may make civilians feel like adversaries. Critics also argue that the militarization disproportionately affects minority communities, leading to excessive use of force during routine policing or protest, further exacerbating tensions. It can also have a psychological effect on officers. Militarization can affect how officers view their role, shifting their mindset from peacekeepers to soldiers, which may increase the likelihood of adopting aggressive tactics. Police and community relations have long been a complex and evolving dynamic, shaped by historical tensions, cultural challenges, and efforts to build trust and cooperation. Addressing this relationship requires understanding key areas that have contributed to both the problems and potential solutions. Many communities, particularly minority and marginalized groups, have a deep-rooted mistrust of law enforcement stemming from historical events such as racial profiling, excessive use of force, and discriminatory policing practices. Incidents like the civil rights era confrontations, the war on drugs, and more recent cases of police brutality have created an enduring sense of injustice. This mistrust is a major barrier to positive police-community relationships, as many citizens feel disconnected or even threatened by those who are meant to protect them. For police officers to effectively serve diverse communities, cultural competency is essential. This means officers must understand and respect the customs, beliefs, and needs of the communities they serve. A lack of cultural awareness can lead to misunderstandings, poor communication, and escalated tensions. By fostering cultural competency through training and outreach, police can improve interactions with citizens, reduce biases, and build trust, ultimately leading to more effective policing. Public confidence in law enforcement is built on transparency and accountability. When police operations, decisions, and misconduct investigations are opaque, it fosters suspicion, it erodes trust. Implementing clear procedures for accountability, such as body cameras, public reporting on police activities, and independent oversight boards, ensures that officers are held responsible for their actions. Transparency helps to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the public, making communities feel safer and more included in the justice process. Active collaboration between the police and communities is essential for building strong relationships. Community policing initiatives which emphasize visibility, positive engagement with the public, encourage collaboration, and foster mutual respect. Officers who are visible and approachable within their communities, maybe through foot patrols, attending local events, and regular public meetings. These things can help reduce fear and make citizens feel their concerns are being heard and addressed. Collaborative efforts also provide opportunities for the community to take a part in shaping policing policies, further strengthening that relationship. Consider this. Jails and prisons are the largest mental health providers in the U.S. In fact, the Los Angeles County Jail is the largest mental health facility in the United States. Researchers argue that mental illness has been criminalized, a perspective that argues that deinstitutionalization, strict hospitalization criteria, criminal justice system net widening, and the wars on drugs and crime have resulted in a number of unintended consequences that have disproportionately affected individuals with mental disorders. Each of these movements produce macro, system-level factors which increase the risk of arrest for individuals with mental disorders by impeding access to mental health care, increasing their contact with police, and limiting police discretion during encounters with individuals with mental disorders. In many jurisdictions, discrepancy exists among the statutory conditions that require police to seek emergency mental health treatment, the legal criteria for involuntary commitment, and the availability of appropriate community mental health services. Although there is some legal variation among states, typically police officers must seek emergency mental health treatment when an individual has demonstrated a risk of harm to their self or to others, they have a critical disability, or they have an obvious illness. Yet, only individuals that present an imminent risk of harm to themselves or to others are likely to meet hospital criteria for emergency hospitalization. Now, to complicate matters, individuals with co-occurring substance abuse or dependence disorders, co-occurring personality disorders, or those with a history of violence and criminal behavior are often denied treatment, even when they meet the criteria for emergency treatment. As a result, arrest by default may be the only option available to police officers when individuals fail to meet the required dangerousness standard or have a co-occurring substance, personality disorder, or have a history of violence and criminal behavior. Now, this observation led one researcher to conclude that the criminal justice is simply the only system that cannot say no. Researchers found that police officers are often reluctant to pursue emergency mental health treatment. This is because once a police officer has taken an individual with major mental disorders into custody, whether or not that individual is going to satisfy a hospital's strict emergency hospitalization criteria becomes the most salient factor in their decision to pursue emergency psychiatric hospitalization or arrest the individual. Now, fearing for the safety of the individual, police officers may resort to arrest just to secure treatment for an individual obviously in crisis, a phenomenon that has been referred to as a mercy booking. Criminal justice system net widening there is therefore the natural product of discrepancy within the mental health system that places the burden on police to operate as street corner psychiatrists. Now, crisis intervention and diversion are strategies that are now being used to manage situations involving individuals with mental illness. And the aim is to de-escalate crisis and divert them away from the criminal justice system, really into more appropriate mental health services. Now, crisis intervention involves immediate short-term actions to prevent harm and stabilize individuals experiencing mental health crises. Trained responders such as crisis intervention teams, officers, social workers, or mental health professors assess the situation and apply de-escalation techniques to ensure safety. These interventions help reduce the risk of escalation unnecessary use of force, and inappropriate arrest. A key goal is to calm the individual and connect them to mental health care services rather than involving law enforcement when possible. Now, diversion programs aim to redirect individuals with mental illness from the criminal justice system and into treatment or supportive services. Diversion typically occurs at a few key points in the justice process, such as before arrest, which is, of course, the most sought after situation, or it could be during court proceedings or even after incarceration. Pre-arrest diversion, often handled by CIT officers, seeks to prevent the individual from entering the system in the first place by connecting them to a community-based service that would include counseling, crisis stabilization, or even residential treatment. Post-arrest diversion, such as mental health courts, involve specialized judicial processes that consider the mental health status and focus on rehabilitation over punishment. Both strategies emphasize the need for a collaborative approach involving law enforcement, healthcare providers, social services, and mental health professionals. This reduces incarceration rates, alleviates the pressure on the criminal justice system, and ensures that the individual receives the care they need. Police officers can face both civil and criminal liability for their actions while performing their duties. In civil liability, officers may be sued in civil court for violating someone's constitutional rights or causing harm through negligence or misconduct. Common claims include excessive force, false arrest, or illegal searches. If found liable, officers or their departments may have to pay damages to the victim. Now, officers can also be criminally prosecuted for acts that violate the law, such as assault, battery, or civil rights violations. If convicted, they may face penalties like fines, imprisonment, or loss of their job and pension. Criminal charges typically apply to serious misconduct, such as intentional harm or abuse of power. Qualified immunity is a legal doctrine that protects government officials, including police officers. Now, they're protected from being held personally liable for constitutional violations such as excessive force or unlawful searches, as long as their actions did not violate clearly established law. In practice, this means that officers are immune from lawsuits unless it is shown that they violated a constitutional right that was well defined at the time of the incident. For example, if an officer uses force during arrest and a plaintiff claims their rights were violated, the court will determine if a reasonable officer in the same situation would have known their actions were unconstitutional based on previous rulings. If no precedent exists, or if the law was unclear, qualified immunity may shield the officer from personal liability. Critics argue that qualified immunity makes it difficult for victims of police misconduct to seek justice. It sets a high bar for proving officers knowingly violated established rights. Supporters contend that it protects officers from frivolous lawsuits, allowing them to perform their duties without the fear of constant legal threats.
Okay, thanks for joining me. Please reach out to me if you have any questions.